looked at different kinds of e-books. So basically, we had the topic of e-books. And what I want to do is just talk about the basic features that e-books have, and then Annabelle is going to talk about two different companies that provide e-books and kind of the differences between them. So essentially, from almost all of these, you can both read online and you can download chapters of the entire book and read it even if you don't have access to the internet. You could do most of the same things that you could do if you were using paper text. So you can highlight. All the programs now have where there's a highlighter. You can take notes. A lot of them have pop-up windows. You can take notes and save those. So every time you open the ebook again, your notes are saved. There are bookmarks so that you can go right to a section or right to a page. They do have a refund policy, but we'll talk about later. There are actually, if you purchase an ebook and then within 14 days you want to return it, under certain circumstances you can get a refund for that. Most of them are rentals, but sometimes there's the option to buy or what's called unlimited access. And they do have those things separately, so it seems like they're different things. That you buy it, you keep it forever, or you get unlimited access, but you can't actually download it and keep it. So those seem to be different things. So those are the basic features, and then Annabelle is going to talk about the two specific ones that we looked at.
Well, actually, I did look a little bit more into this unlimited access thing because it seems a little strange. I think it might be, some of the times it's a little hard to find out exactly what these things are. So
Yes.
in terms of just like how useful or how easy it is to find information about the two products, sometimes it's a little tricky. But from what I gather, unlimited access is that you rent it, but for like past the semester, you can rent it for longer periods of time so the students want access to it, something like that. It's as far as I got, but it was kind of difficult to find out exactly what does it mean.
Longer term, but not bond.
But not exactly, yeah. Some kind of weird combination like that. And then one other thing I did while I was looking a little bit more that both of them seem to do is have that you can integrate it with Blackboard, which I thought was kind of interesting because we had talked about the fact that it didn't seem to happen. So you can integrate both CourseSmart and this CafeScribe with Blackboard. But it seemed to me that CafeScribe seemed to be easier to do it because I think you could do it on your own, whereas CourseSmart, the little information that they had, I think you have to go through a bookstore to do it, so it seemed a little bit more complicated. But neither one seems very easy in that sense. So this is CourseSmart, and I am a little bit more familiar with this one just because I actually have been using it. I like it. I think it's very easy to navigate. I have a few students who are using it. It seems to be a cheaper option for them, certainly, and it's a little bit more, I guess, accessible, or at least mobile, because you can read it from very different formats. We did find that CourseSmart has more textbooks than CafeScribe, and also at least the newer ones seem to be cheaper than CafeScribe. CourseSmart, I think, is much more all of our experience was that it was much more user-friendly in terms of navigating, finding things, figuring out how it works. I certainly found that I use it sometimes on my iPad when I'm reading the textbook, and it's really easy to navigate and figure out, like very user-friendly. Like it doesn't take you very long to figure out how it works.
And they provide a lot of information actually on the website and little videos. So CafeScribe, it's a little bit hard. You really have to work to figure out the information about it. You would really just have to purchase it, or both of them have a demo, which I didn't mention. They both have trial, so you can actually try it for 30 days free. So you could just try CafeScribe, but to actually find the information on the website was harder. Difficult.
Yeah, they have I'll show you. They have this, this nice page, and they do have this video here that you can look at, but you can't click on things, which seems a little weird. And so, they say something like, oh, you can save or you can organize, and then it's like, well, what do you mean? And you can't click on it. So it's like, so I'm not entirely sure where would you find out information about how to get organized. Whereas CourseSmart seems to be a little bit more, just easier to find out what's going on than the other one. CafeScribe, it does have the capacity to share notes. So you can share notes with your students, and they can share notes with each other. And I believe CourseSmart is now testing the beta for that, but it's not out yet. So that is one thing where CafeScribe seems to be a little bit better. What else? The buying, integration. One thing I found out too was that with CourseSmart, in terms of the saving money, that apparently they combined like a block, like 6 spots on their bookshelf for like $200, which is pretty good. And then any book would fit in those slots.
Well, not any, but they can get, so you pay $200
Yeah.
and you can get access to up to 6 books.
Right.
So if you had 4 or 5 classes and you checked and all the textbooks happen to be
It's
available
much better.
on that,
Yeah.
then that would be cheaper than buying them individually, but it's contingent upon at least 4 of your classes using
Being
books
there.
that they
Yes.
have.
Yeah.
Because for below that, it
Yeah.
wouldn't save you money really.
Right, yeah.
3
And
or
again,
4.
does seem to be this difference where CourseSmart seems to have much more textbooks.
Mhm.
I know that Christina was looking and she uses a lot of literature and she couldn't find any for books in either one of these. So I think it really, you kind of have to go in and see what. The books I'm using are all in CourseSmart, but I couldn't find any of them on CafeScribe. So I think it really depends on content on that.
Is it textbooks that you're using? Or?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have other readings, but I do use
Yeah.
textbooks, so for those, they're there.
And memoirs, they don't really have memoirs or literature, but like they
Yeah.
do have philosophy,
Yeah.
and they have so like main works that are always used, like Homer's The Odyssey, like things like that
Yeah.
are there,
Yeah.
but not just
Yeah.
other literature that's not as well known.
Yeah. What else? CourseSmart CafeScribe did seem to have this 3-day trial for a book, so I couldn't find the equivalent in CourseSmart. So it might just be because, like I said, sometimes it is a little hard to find information in either one of these. I think we already mentioned that the nice thing about these programs is that you can use them in any devices. So whether you have an iPad or your Kindle or whatever, or the computer, so that is nice because I know we were talking about if you buy something on the Kindle, first there was no pages, which I still can't quite believe.
No page numbers on Kindles. Kindles
so-
have no page.
Which is really difficult if you're telling your students go to page whatever and you don't have a page to go to. So these ones are a little bit more user friendly because they look just like the textbook, and you can use it in any devices. The phone, whatever it is that they're using. So I think that is good.
Now that brings us into advantages
Yeah.
and disadvantages.
Oh, was that? Did I steal your stuff? I'm sorry.
The Paperwhite Kindle now has page numbers. You can shuttle between
Okay.
locations and page numbers.
Really? Because I opened it while we were talking about it. This is surprising. So I opened like a textbook I have on statistics, which you would think, if anything, that should have it, and there was like no page number on it. It was weird.
I'm
Anyway.
pretty sure that the Paperwhite that I have at
Yeah.
home, I have it allows me to shuttle toggle between
Yeah.
page numbers and locations, which is what Kindle was using before.
Right.
Well, that is the real advantage of these, though. It's like if you buy it from the iTunes store, an ebook, you can only use it on iTunes devices, iPad, but if you buy it from these, you can actually, in many cases, load an app and still use it on your iPhone, still use it on your iPad, or if you have what's the PC equivalent, the Android or the, so you can use it on, if you buy it through here, you can use it on any device if you would happen to have different devices.
Did you guys know if any of the textbooks that you guys looked up on CourseSmart, does the system have its own reader with inside of it?
That we will check.
I'll check. I was just
Yeah.
curious if since you guys have used it in the classroom. if it has-
So some of the advantages and disadvantages have a little reverse, but I'll just recap. Some of the advantages, these ebooks are just like books, you can read online, you can work on Bible, you can take notes, they're compatible with every device. And when students bring these to class, they can bring their phone, they can take a tablet, whatever it is that they want. They are less expensive, especially since not to mention, students have the option of renting just parts of the books, so that especially, and I'm going to take this as well, sometimes we assign books to our students and we don't read every single chapter. And so with this ebook, students can just have the chapters and put them in the sheet. Those copies are available, so it's good for faculty. These ebooks are more accessible.
I was just saying, you can select chapters out of a standard book as well through the bookstore. So you can tell them, like I did this semester, I ordered a loose leaf textbook that's easy for scanning. And I told them which chapters I wanted to use, and I got the textbook at a major discount, so.
Some of the publishers will do it too.
The publishers are doing customized now.
Customized for
Yeah, customized
So you can
chapters.
do the same thing with the e-book, which is nice.
Yeah. And like in Annabella's case with CourseSmart, the ebook is just an option. So that's good. So students can still use the regular standard book. So I think that's a good thing for students to still have choices.
Let me click the advantages. This is no work for me if I'm only assigning certain chapters and it's an ebook. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to go to the publisher, the bookstore. They can just go online and buy the chapters I indicate. Like, it doesn't involve me at all.
Some of the disadvantages, at least in my field, since I study literature, looking at literature, is both on CourseSmart and CafeScribe. None of the books that are available. I don't use textbooks. I use mostly fiction or small anthologies. And so both of these sources, CourseSmart and CafeScribe, tend to be still very limited. If I were using textbooks, I think I have an easier time. But so you just have to think about that depending on your field of study. You may not have those sources for you. And the other thing that we talked about is that while students may like ebooks because they still are like books and you can highlight and you can take notes, we know that studies show that taking notes back still improves retention. So we're worried about that. Sometimes students need to actually write the words so that it's a process. But again, that can also be an advantage for learning disabled students who need to type and to see it on the screen. And I said it's mostly textbooks. And we also talked about the refund policy having some restrictions so that may be a possible challenge for students.
And you have to go all the way in. Like, it says you can get a refund, you go to one page, then you have to go to another page, and there are like 8 restrictions. If you've printed more than 20% of the book, you can't get a refund. If you've downloaded more than so much of the book, you can't get a refund. So students probably won't go read that whole policy before they buy the book. So like if you buy it from the bookstore, they tell you if it's unbundled, we won't take it back. If you write in it, we don't. So you sort of know up front with the bookstore what you can and can't do. With this, it is there on the website, but it's not right on the front page. You have to go look for it. And there are a lot of kind of weird, which I get that they don't want you to buy it, print half of it, and then return it and get your money back. But it's a pretty low margin for how much you can print or download and get a refund. So you have to be aware of that. If you were actually taking a class and doing the work the first 2 weeks and then decided to drop it, it might be an issue.
Possibility, since you're using some from CourseSmart, you might pass along to SSD and have them open up and the kids will see the video.
Yeah.
And that gives you a check.
Yeah, if it's something that we notice that professors are doing, we would suggest that you still tell the bookstore that plus CourseSmart, the physical book is still an option.
Right.
Like, you want to be able to say all these are options, because then if it's an option, then we will still have access to that. I mean, we don't limit. But what we do let students partake in that is, if it's a CourseSmart or somehow some kind of downloadable thing, we let them go ahead and purchase this one, because it's only fair for students to be able to save the money. It's not very fair to have a student be able to buy a physical book because they have the disability in order to get access for them, where another student in the classroom can pay, what, $30-something to do that. So we give that option also.
And the last thing I think is that they can't, like for many of these books, there's no option to buy either. So a lot of students, they don't want to keep books, particularly textbooks. But for some of these, there's no option to buy, so you can't, if it were your major, you can't keep it. You rent it for so long and then it goes back. That's the trade-off for saving money, is that you don't get it permanently.
I think that's it, right?
Yep, that's it.
Thank you. Arun? Sorry to give you so much little time.
I have a handout. So our group was tasked with looking at different textbooks or sources, and unfortunately my partner, I don't know if she's not. So I was working on this by myself here, and so what I did was look at various resources and try to identify some feature. Mainly I was looking at it from the perspective of has the material been reviewed or peer reviewed, and so I looked at some of the sources, and some of them have been peer reviewed by other faculty members, so there is some credibility associated with that. But some of the others are not necessarily peer reviewed. I'm not saying that if they're not peer reviewed, they're not good, but at least if they are peer reviewed, you can be assured of some quality of that. And the thing I like the most was MERLOT, and I'm a little biased there behind the editor of engineering on MERLOT, so I'm a little biased towards MERLOT there, but they have an extensive peer review process, so every material goes through 2 peer reviews and a review by the editor before it is there. And so I think, and plus I think MERLOT serves as kind of an all-in-all repository of variety of sources. So in fact, this semester I'm using 3 textbooks from MERLOT for one of my courses, and I just replaced my regular textbook with those 3 textbooks, and so far students definitely really like it, because the original textbook was $150 to $160, and I have about 30 students in my class, so right there it was a good saving right away. And I think all in all I like MERLOT because he had a wide variety of topics, wide variety of resources, not just textbooks, but videos and articles and the whole variety of resources. And so that's kind of what I look at in a nutshell. And there are other sources also, if you look at the handout, there are other sources which are peer reviewed as well. And I didn't play around with them as much as I did with MERLOT, because I have been using MERLOT extensively for a few years now, and so that's what I have to report.
How do your students, like, do they know the difference, or do you explain to them, or that you've been using for so long now that they just automatically that this is a textbook?
Yeah, I mean, I put it in my syllabi, and then I also, I mean, I teach a lot of online classes, so I do an initial introduction telling them where to find this textbook and how do you go about accessing the textbook and things like that. So, so far I haven't had any complaints about not being able to access the book. And in fact, I haven't had any questions also. I had one question about they were not sure how to access the textbook, but apart from that, everybody was right on. They were able to find the textbook. So.
I wish I could, there's no,
Yeah, I actually just one, I'll get them all out.
Okay, so we looked at 3 different sites. One was called Pachyderm, and Pachyderm is an easy-to-use multimedia authoring tool. So if you don't have a lot of experience with developing multimedia stuff, it's not helpful.
Yeah.
Then Pachyderm is a way for you to develop multimedia pages, kind of like a form content. So you can go in and you can select your music, and you can pop in videos, and you can kind of craft and design things. And if you click here into a new page, it gives you an example here from one of our classes. So this is something that Fresno State subscribes to, is the Pachyderm service. So this is an example of a page that was created by one of our courses here at Fresno State. And you can just see how, there's all sorts of little bits embedded. You've got, if you scroll over, you've got, the different classes you can click on, and it'll give you the goals and classroom visits and reference materials, and so everything's linked together.
Yeah, each of these is a video, and it's a unit, and there's also a feed at the bottom here, so you can move from section to section. I found that this one's also, if you click on these arrows, you get more text and less text. I found this one to be really useful for questions of accessibility, because you have the option, if you play the video,
I really enjoy orienting.
you have the
them.
option of bringing up the captions,
How is it
or
going
not.
to technically describe motion?
And you can also
Most of the funding
have
will
the
change
entire
it, so it's
text
hard to get a fix
over
on it
the
since it's always
video.
moving and changing.
So
And so we
you
have
can
to
choose
come
to
up
watch
with
the
a way
video,
of
or you can
technically
choose to read what
producing it.
she's
In
saying.
141, we're
This is something
taking
that
a class
created this,
that's
so
called
someone
mechanics.
captioned
I
this.
think
and they
this is
created-
all SLO folks who were involved in this first day of class. There's also a number of features down here for sound. contrast and font.
But your
to
question
increase
was who did the captioning? Because it automated in some way, or was it done? And my take on that is that it's not automated because the captioning is edited to what, when you look at the captioning and you hear what the first speaker that we were just looking at says, they don't exactly match.
Mm.
So I think it was typed, like repeats that she does. When she says like repeats, like is not in there. So I don't think it's automated.
There are some tools on the main Pachyderm page, and I didn't look at all of these tools, but I just noticed that they're there for video conversion, for recording audio, for making graphic buttons, information graphics, and then video captioning in Pachyderm. So there's at least links that tell you how you do this or what tools you could use. This one is suggesting Magpie for creating the captions. So when you create the content, you can also make it accessible content. But if you're using video, if you're using audio, there's some tools here for that. Should we go on to the next one? The
Connections,
yeah.
So Connections is like a website where you can create modules and share them as a module. So rather than a site where you're looking at complete course packets or something like that, this is supposed to be, I think it calls itself chunks. So this is knowledge chunks, small knowledge chunks called modules. But it's interesting. I thought it was an interesting way to go about sharing information. So it's like you would do just a topic or a reading set or something out of a class. And I don't know which content set you looked at, but I'm an anthropologist, by the way.
And so I tried to look at sort of literature, history stuff, but you want to look at typing one? Let's see if I can find one that I was, unfortunately this isn't my computer, I would call up my recent searches. It would show me one that anyway, there was one that was kind of interesting about slavery and literature. And the pages generally look like Wikipedia pages to me. Yeah, I think this might be it. If this isn't it, we'll just take a look at it. So basically you have, normally there's a table of contents here, but it looks like there's only one piece of information on this page, so they don't have a table of contents. But that first box that's right here is usually a table of contents. These lenses are actually kind of endorsements by companies or by organizations that it serves, I think, as a kind of peer review in a way, sort of, to say this organization has looked at this and we endorse this, so you're looking at this through the lens of a particular organization. I'm not really sure why the word lens, but they're called lenses. And then there are a series of tags. So if you want to find other content related to this content, you can. This one, like I said, it strikes me as being very much modeled after Wikipedia style entries. It looks to me like Wikipedia entries, and then there are hyperlinks embedded, as well as images that are embedded. So, and then the bibliography at the end, some options for social media tools here. And, you can download things, you can add that to your favorites. Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, I mean, when I was popping around in the anthropology stuff, there were a whole bunch of other types of entries. So I found one that was a pretty interesting list, actually, that I might use, of free online anthropology videos and clips. And so it would redirect you to a YouTube link, but they were YouTube links that, somebody somewhere, this is sort of wiki-ish, right? But somebody somewhere had taken the time to look at, and they were some fairly decent links. And I've done a lot of searching on YouTube for anthro links, and those are some I hadn't seen before. So I thought that was pretty nifty. So you would scroll down, and if you hit the first one, cultural relativity and ethnocentrism, then it would take you to a YouTube link.
Oh, okay.
Hello, and welcome to Lecture 1 in your Anthropology with CT class. In lecture today, I'd like to talk to you about two concepts
Yeah.
in anthropology.
Okay, so, and then
First chapter.
the last, unless there's anything else you wanted to say about that, while I call up this next one, it's called Soomo Publishing. And while the others, I believe, are free and open source, was that your impression? I know that
Yes.
the CSU Pachyderm was. I had a harder time figuring that out for Connections.
I didn't see anything on Connections to make me think it wasn't open source.
It seems like yeah, I'm not exactly certain. But this one is, I think, private, and the students pay for content. Anywhere from, I think, around $50 to $75. And this is really, these are text books. And it's much slicker than the others. I think this one's the sexiest of the three, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. And you can take a test drive. This one here on American government, for example, it's created, there's a table of contents here. And so if the student wants to read, if it's time to read the chapter on Congress, the student reads the chapter on Congress. There are images and text. And then what's interesting, I think, is that you can create, you can embed video and pictures, but you can also create associated reading quizzes. Often these are called What's the Gist? And so sometimes they open up. The student has to open that up, and they can opt to take that little exam or quiz. Sometimes they can be required. I didn't see any that prevented you from going forward unless you did, but I imagine that might be an option. And so another nice thing is that you hover over particular words and you get definitions of necessary and proper clause, so terms that students might need to know. Here's one of those get the gist. These are study questions. And so they kind of test the students' ability to retain or remember what they've just read. And so they can hide those, they can incorporate those.
And I looked at a different one. I looked at the critical thinking one, and it seemed a little content light, to be perfectly honest. If you look at the critical thinking one, you go to chapter 1, they have a video that you watch. I mean, it's a 1-paragraph introduction, and then there's a video that you watch, and then a set of, I guess 6 questions here that are some narrative and some quick and funny. Go to, you have to
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where it is.
go
Catalog.
to the catalog.
There we go.
Scroll down to.
Yeah, the critical thinking. The U.S. history one actually was really good. I looked at that one too.
I'm gonna take a test drive. I'm gonna hit chapter 1.
Yeah, that's fine. I looked at this one too. This one looked like it was really about a kind of lower division of critical thinking, intro to critical thinking
It
course.
did, but even for that, it's still really light.
Yeah, it was.
So you click, like you said, it's very sexy, right? It's very select. So you click what is thought, and there's that pretty icon again, and then you hit there and you watch a video, and then you take a quiz with a set of questions. So they were narrative, and they do some grading, but.
Panels have what's called insert points, where you can insert like a compressor or a gate.
So
But they're creative.
Something
it's really creative. The videos were
make it
great.
sound
I mean,
better.
it's
And after you've
well
done it for a while, you
produced,
just learn
I'm
different
sure
instruments that need different
these
things on.
sample
You
texts
hit a
or
drum and it
content
rings a lot. You might want to pull a gate on
modules
it.
are selected
Make it,
precisely
stop
because they
ringing
look
so
really
much.
good.
They do.
In a nutshell.
So-
that's what
And
it
if you look at the About Us section on Soomo
All the
Publishing.
newer boards have these things built right in the digital consoles. But this
You're
old
gonna see
guy
that
and this
people
old
who
guy still use this.
created this on Soomo Publishing, these web texts. I mean, they set out to do it differently, right? They've got filmmakers and instructional designers and,
Yeah, I didn't look at this.
I mean,
This
they're-
is- Right.
yeah, I mean,
This
what
is why
they're
it looks so
doing
good.
is fundamentally different. I mean, our publishers are taking traditional textbooks and they're converting them into a web source and hyperlinking a few things and turning their exercises that were in the textbook into, exercises that are quick and point. But these guys were starting ground up, and so I thought that was really different and really interesting.
Yeah. I actually, of the three, I found this the most attractive. If I were a student, I would want to
Yeah.
use this interface. I think it would be interesting to use. And at the same time, I think it's the one that's maybe the most complicated in terms of how you get going. It's also the one where you really need to get a test scribe and start using this, but it's one where the students are going to pay for the content. And my understanding with Connexions and Pachyderm is that students won't be paying for the content. You'll be creating content that they can access. I think the benefit with the Pachyderm is that it is a CSU product. Well, it's not a CSU product, but it's a product that the CSU has access to, and they have a team of help staff that would help you with that. So I think you'd get greater assistance with Pachyderm. And I think Pachyderm is really useful for creating alternatives to PowerPoint slides or learning modules. I watched one on theater. I watched the whole thing on theater. It was really interesting with, comparing film and theater and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different things you could do. They all seem like good ways to flip the classroom, to have the students deal with the content, the lecture stuff outside of the class, and then come into the class ready to do activities or whatever it is. And I can also imagine using any of these products as in place of a PowerPoint or a lecture, where you could project that in the classroom, and it could be the content that they're getting in the classroom as opposed to the content that they're responsible for outside the classroom, depending on kind of what your goals are and how you are most comfortable teaching.
I would say the last one's a little bit different because, as you both were talking about, they're sort of creating whole textbooks and they're creating them differently. But the university, I'm on the ePortfolio implementation team, is adopting one ePortfolio platform for the entire university, and most of the other stuff that they were doing, like embedded videos, creating content, short of creating a whole textbook, you can do with ePortfolio platforms as well. Like, it's all in there too, where you can embed a video. You can either do PowerPoint or you can create a module. Instead of just uploading your PowerPoint, you can create a module. And with ePortfolio, also then you can assess it. Like, you can click on rubrics and grade work right in, and they're integrating it with Blackboard. So depending on which one we adopt, but most of them can actually be integrated with Blackboard. And so the first two, I didn't see much that you couldn't do in the ePortfolio platform. Now this one actually has features.
Yeah, this I think is basically if you want to create
Yeah.
a textbook that is a textbook for your class, but that you might also want to market, I would imagine that this third one is probably the way to go. If you want to assemble content and create a narrative that links it specifically for your class, I think the first two are probably the better two, and they would give you access to MERLOT and to other repositories of teaching content.
I think on all of these, the reason I picked those three so you guys can look at is because it shows the different range of technology and the different range of creativity that you can do with open source, with the text you have, with your experience, with your creativity of what you want to do. And then the last one, you're working with a team of professionals who is going to be saying, this is what I have in mind that I want to do, and they'll come up with a product, or they'll come up with what, you bring them the context, you bring them what the creativity is, and they'll put it together in a package, and they say, is this what you're looking at? Is this what you're thinking about? And you go through each step with them to make sure that that textbook or that web book that you will be using for your class is available, and it's finished, and it's done, and it's professionally done.
Yeah.
So that way, you can use it for the next 5-10 years if you want.
But I kind of got, I did that Soomo as well in my preparation, and I kind of got the feeling from in terms of content authoring, they were more interested in working with a school to develop a MOOC. It's not for your individual classrooms. That's where they're making their money off of is having 1,000 students spend that $50 to $75.
Right.
Yeah, I can see where Soomo would be.
Yeah.
And I was recently at a presentation with an Austrian company that is doing the same thing. Basically, they're really trying to tap into entire systems or universities.
Because they're looking to make money.
Yeah, exactly. And so and they want scaling up. And
they want 1,000 students. They don't want 20.
Exactly.
Students.
So I think the first two are better if your goal is not to scale up. The third one, like I said, it looks really good. It's nice looking, and but you're right. I think their goals are different than merely helping a professor kind of create content that's useful for a particular course.
Okay, so a little bit more, don't worry about it.
Okay,
so we looked, there were two on, our section was talking about how to author the course content yourself. And so instead of figuring out how to create course content, like for an online class or whatever, from stuff that's already existing, this is how to make your own, essentially how to put together your own book or how to put together your own course packet for your students. And so there were two that were recommended. The two that we looked at, and then there were a couple others that we found outside of that. But this one is the AcademicPub. It essentially what it does is it creates digital and/or print custom course materials, and so you and your students can choose either digitally or custom, or they can choose print or they can choose to have the digital source. So depending on what type of textbook they prefer, they can choose. And this one's really neat if you have if you're the type of instructor that uses a lot of articles rather than, or a lot of sections of textbooks, rather than just one big textbook. Because what this does is it essentially compiles multiple articles from different places and puts them together in your own course packet. And they're really quick. I signed up for an account on like Tuesday or something, and I had typed in something that I was interested in having for a textbook that they didn't have access to, and they already emailed me and found me access to the chapter. And I just typed it in as a joke, like just to see, because they say that they're really quick. They are really, really quick with finding stuff that they don't have access to. They partner with a number of different publishing companies to provide the articles and stuff. I'm not sure if it would be something that I would ever want to do, because I traditionally teach the first year classes, and my students oftentimes need a whole book rather than just an article here or an article there. But I can see how it can be something that would work well for an upper division class or a grad class, where it's just, again, it's putting it together in a course pack. You can also add, one of the things I found is that you can also add your own personal touches to it if you want to upload a PowerPoint into your course pack, or if you want to put in pictures and stuff. They'll put that all together for you. So it's kind of neat. The other one was very similar, just not run from our campus. Like this one is our campus's bookstore. This one was an outside company. What I found is they have some books. I don't know if you can put in your own.
Yeah, so one of the things about that one is you can add a bit of content, but you're really using their books first, and then you can
They
change
let
it.
they let you edit
Yeah.
and manipulate the pages. So
Yeah.
like you can change the titles of the
So it's not full
chapters
authoring,
and-
but you can change some things around and update it and that sort of thing. And they're charging students, they said about $20 a book in that case, so it's less than a regular textbook.
And this one's neat too because it has, it also has that accessibility, so students can choose what format they want from their books. They can choose if they want it. I think they had digital, audio, rented, or I think they had a lot of different formats that students can choose from.
And so they have a pretty good catalog of books. You might not be able to get every book that you want, but their idea is they're trying to create a low-cost alternative to the typical textbook environment. And so it's a little bit more about getting one of their textbooks than modifying it as you need it, and then having it made like as accessible and available to students with that. So.
The cool thing that I found about both of them is the ability to choose between print and digital, because I know some students still just can't handle digital copies of things, and some students just hate carrying print copies of books. So the ability to be able to choose, I think, is really neat for both of these things. Wait, does it have a...
Yeah, and then I actually went a little further because for me personally, a lot of the things that I'm really interested in, I'm gonna eject this drive for a second. Involve things that are more multimedia, and also I want to be able to completely I want to be able to completely customize the information, because there's not a lot out there for art to begin with. And I'll show you a couple things I came up with. There's not a lot out there for art, and then on top of it, the area that I'm in, I really hate all the textbooks that are there. They just, because they're really kind of more, I teach art, they're more commercially oriented, and I feel that they just don't go into the right things. And I'm very particular about the content, how my students approach content. In some ways, I actually have to limit some of the things that they do so that they engage with it properly. And so I went through the CSU site and actually just went through all of their area under customizing and authoring content tab. And then in here, I went through and I checked out like everything that was there. So Flat World is one of the items there. I did look into Pachyderm, which other people talked about, and MERLOT, so I won't really go into those. But some of the other items, like Flow is kind of weird. Flow is like flexible learning for education. It's one that you open it up and they give you like every corporate phrase you can imagine. And it doesn't actually say anything when you go there. So I really don't even know what Flow is about, actually. So that one was a little bit odd.
Flow's just another similar thing to
Yeah.
MERLOT and to Connexions,
Okay.
where basically users can create content and then anybody can access it, so.
And so I really started looking at the commercial ones, and I kind of feel very strongly about commercial products. I'm always very particular that they're not just taking advantage of us, you know, like, oh, I'll create all your content and you make all the money, you know, so. So that was Soomo, as we talked about already, and I thought it was a little bit more for online. And then I looked at Soft Chalk, and at first I was really opposed to Soft Chalk, but in the end they kind of won me over. It's not cheap. Soft Chalk is one, they have a cloud version and a crate version. The cloud version is just basically if you pay an annual fee to use their product, and then the crate version is the one where you actually use it. And like I said, it's not cheap, it's about $700 for this software. I did go ahead and do their 30-day trial, but what I really liked about it was that when you use it, and I don't have it installed on this machine so I can't show you, but it's very simple to create pages. You're not really getting any animated content, but you can put up images, you can put in movies, and they do have modules that you can pull in to do various, let me just pull up this here, to do even like little quizzes and things like that. And there's a lot that you can do with it. So you know, you've got interactive aspects of it. It's supposed to be really easy to use. So I downloaded their little trial version, and I just like threw something together very quickly. And what was nice about it is, and this is where a lot of the software is going now, is what they're creating a web version that's accessible, because you can't use Flash and have it be accessible, and that's usually a lot of what I end up using. So this was my awesome little trial. It says paid for education for puppies, okay? And all of this stuff here is all of kind of the template stuff that they have in it. Their interface is actually pretty dry when you work with it, but there's a nice little print function on there. There's some extra things, and when you go in, like I said, it looks very dry. It looks almost like a Blackboard page, but then you can go in and they have modules that you can bring over as well. And like I said, for like interactivity, for multimedia, and that sort of thing. But the real important aspect of it is this right here. All of this, they have the CSS style sheet. Everything's going to be in either HTML. Any animations are going to be done with Java. They're avoiding a lot of those pitfalls, and any image that you put in gets kind of ported in. So you have this like all ready to go folder that you can put up on any web page. And so I really liked that aspect of it with it. And like I said, in the end, they actually kind of won me over. Now again, it's not cheap though. That's the problem. And it seems like I did look on MERLOT at their content creation as well, and that one was very dry and very difficult to use. You got really basic statics type of things on it. And so it seems like you do have to go a little bit more corporate-y. So on that note, I pursued looking into, I've looked into them in the past, but I also pursued looking into iBook Author from Apple. And I had avoided using that in the past. When it first came out, I thought it was like going to be amazing and life-changing for me, because you could come up with these really beautiful books that had multimedia in them. And that's really what I need, is something very visual, because I'm dealing with visual people. And that has multimedia, because I want to be able to put in video tutorials on how to use different softwares and things like that. Initially, it was just for iPad, and so there's no way that I'm going to build a consumer base for Apple. You know, even though they're giving me this free software, I'm not going to have everybody run out and buy iPads. But they've just opened it up now where you can also use it on a Macintosh. which is a big changer for me because we teach in a Macintosh lab. And so or students can come to the library and use one of the Macintosh computers here if they have a PC at home. So it does open it up considerably for them. They can do a laptop checkout from the library and that sort of thing. And then beyond that, I looked into Kindle as an authoring platform. And the problem with Kindle is as soon as you try to author multimedia, it gets really complicated. But in the end, after looking through, sorry, Kindle. So they have a variety of Kindle publishing programs that you can use. And most of them will not do multimedia, but one of the areas that I found as a possibility is that you can put hyperlinks on Kindle. So if somebody's got, and the nice thing about Kindle is it's not just about if somebody's got a Kindle reader. Kindle is available on the iPhone, it's available on Macintosh, it is available on PC. A Kindle reader can be put anywhere. And so I could effectively just hyperlink to my Vimeo account and then play the videos that way. It's not as ideal as I would like. I would like everything really pretty and all together if possible, but it is an option. I don't know exactly how that works in terms of accessibility and things like that, but it is another option at least.
And I also want to mention that I know that Tilt has a license to SoftShop.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So if
Awesome.
you guys want to explore that and start creating that, talk to Mary or talk to Jolyn, and they will give you the access code.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I thought I'd just mention, since you brought up SoftChalk, that when I visited CSU Northridge to see their tablet initiative, because the president has been making noises about having a tablet initiative here at Fresno State, and the 3 authoring tools that they decided on were iBooks Author, SoftChalk, and then PDF. I'm not sure what that is, but I guess just creating PDFs.
Okay.
I don't think PDF is a software, but those were the notes I'd taken on just when you said SoftChalk. I was like, I've heard that somewhere.
And I don't think iBooks is accessible though. I think Mac has its own inherent reader that it uses, but it's not. But if you've got images and stuff in there, I don't know if they're allowed have alt tags or things like that on it. I'd have to explore that more. That's what I'm hoping to do with this program, is to actually explore some of these and try to develop some actual materials for students. I just loved that how SoftChalk brought that up, because that's actually a big change in animation for the web anyways. It's all been done with Flash, but Flash is just bad on so many levels, and especially it's not accessible. And so all of these software companies are scrambling to try to come up with a device, some kind of interface that's easier for people to use, where you can create stuff that then outputs all these files. Because to do it yourself, to come up with the HTML programming and the CSS style sheets, I mean, you really have to know how to program to do even the most simplest of things. So
I was going to say that, I mean, I think these are really good, and I think if you're a little bit tech savvy, if you're really used to using PowerPoint, that these are fine. But I was actually approached by Great Rivers, and I've looked into them a little bit, and they want to make a profit. I've agreed to adopt the class, the ebook in my class for 3 semesters. I think 2 or 3 semesters I've agreed to use it. But the thing is that I design it, so I'm writing part of the text, and they're getting copyright permission for excerpts that I want to use. Well, all the tech stuff they're doing. So when I say, okay, in the past when I've used a paper book, students have been able to, fill it out and do this, or look in the back and do this. And he's like, oh, you can, and 2 of the terms I didn't even know. I'm like, you're gonna have to explain that, I don't know what you're talking about. And so he was talking about toggling, that you can go back and forth, and then he was also talking about this other term that he used, where essentially it could be interactive in a multi sort of, not screen, but a multi-page view. So you could be interacting on different separate pages at the same time on one screen.
Right.
So if you needed them to be looking at like an excerpt from a primary source document in the back of the book, that could be pulled up. They could be highlighting or marking on that while they were filling out the questionnaire. I don't have to, in fact, I couldn't do any of that.
Right.
And he thought of things when I said, well, it needs to have X function. He's like, well, I can do that. I can do that function for you if you'd like. But I would suggest that you do it this way instead. And I found myself a couple times, I'm like, no, your way's better. So, and he's gonna do that all. I'm gonna give him the text and the images and the things that I want, and he's gonna do all of this and send it back. And the prices, if you look at the prices of their books, they're not that expensive, and that's partly why they don't want to have a lot of excerpts, because they don't want copyright to push the cost up. So it's not prohibitively expensive. And
What's the name
it's Great Rivers Publishing, and they sort of do ebooks is their thing. They don't do real, well, what I would call real publishing, being a Luddite, but they don't really publish print
Yeah.
books. It's
Well,
all.
some of what I look for too is how does it get distributed to the students? And how do I retain the content? Because if I'm creating this content, I'm not gonna put it up on some server where now they tell me like, oh, you stopped paying us, you don't get it anymore. Or if I switch my job, I don't get it anymore, you know? So I would, that's what I liked about Soft Chalk was that it's a desktop module. You create it, I've got that folder, I can put that folder anywhere. I can put it up on the web free for students, or I can password restrict it, or I can take it with me somewhere else.
I asked them, because I have a couple things in teaching the introduction to historical skills. I've created a couple things myself, and I said, well, I don't care about copyright in terms of publishing, like only you can publish it, I won't publish it elsewhere. But I have to have free use of that as the author to do whatever I want with it. I'm not turning over copyright to you so that I couldn't go to a conference and distribute it. And he's like, no, read the contract carefully. There's a little clause that says that the author retains it all for their personal use. I just couldn't publish it in another format.
But I think it's just something that we all need to be aware of when we look at these, like Soomo, if their team is developing your MOOC, you know, and you decide to go with a different distributor, you know, like you don't get to take that MOOC with you because they've invested quite a bit in it. And then also the question is, what do they get to do with it? You know, is it after a certain period of time, do they get to open up to other schools? Do they get to, you know, so we have to really be conscious of what's happening with that intellectual content, you know.
So in these terms, you're saying that potentially they would retain it and they could use it in other ways?
It depends on the agreement. Now, the ones I looked at, like I said, Soft Chalk's not like that.
Okay.
iBooks not like that, but I have to look into how do I distribute iBooks without going through Apple's, because I don't want my stuff going out to the world. I'm sorry, you know, the students pay me, and the state of California pays me. Some student in, you know, Colorado's not paying me, and that's just how I feel about it, you know. And so I don't want it available to everybody, everywhere. I don't want it to show up on some MOOC somewhere else, you know. And so I feel like I want to restrain it. So I'm not going to put it up on Apple's site for universities because it goes out to everybody. It's free for everyone. That's a nice idea. Maybe if my paycheck was higher, I'd consider that, but it's not, you know. So I want to be able to take it with me, you know, or I want to be able to make changes to it. I don't want an old version of it up there. If I update it, you know, I want to be able to make sure that I can clear out the old versions. And I also want to be able to restrict my students from going too far ahead in the course. That's a big thing for me. So when I put things up on Vimeo, I password protect everything. Only certain classes are allowed to use certain materials, you know. So I just feel like I want control. I want it, it's mine, you know.
We talked about it, if you could block certain things on the ebook, because I don't distribute during the semester, like there's one thing, I don't give them until the week they're doing it.
One change.
And that was one of the things I asked him, and he's like, oh no, it's not necessarily
Anything that we talked about, whether
So
it's
it might be
accessible
a
materials.
module.
Yes.
electronic version.
Or it might be
I also asked
using
about
ebook.
accessibility.
Yes. Or library resources somehow, so that your students can say, at least adopt it. So if your textbook or something, or they're using it's like $10, and you're able to make it where now they're only using $8, that's a great thing.
So if I eliminated the textbook, I've already done this, and I do that, but they have to pay more for it. That we're
Yes.
talking about,
Yes.
I've already eliminated it for next semester, and I'm gonna use these other materials, then that means.
Perfect. If you remember you're looking into authoring the stuff that you're talking about.
That's a different class, that's actually a different class I'm offering, that won't be ready till next fall, but for the Holocaust class, I've always used a textbook. And I'm not going to, I'm gonna go with some other resources this time, I'm gonna post just one chapter, and then I'm gonna do some other stuff and
Yes.
eliminate the textbook, which was like $35.
Yes, and that's
And we didn't go through every chapter of these, we didn't go through every chapter of it, so that's what I'm doing for that.
So you'll get an email from me just to give me your updates on what you plan to do. And just
Okay.
reply back, and then if we don't really need to meet, then we won't meet next semester until at least March. Okay.
And just so I'm clear about the
Thank you both.
database,
Thank you.
I found, in addition